As we often do on Thursdays, we want to take a look back at some of the big news items of the week with our panel of pundits from the Washington Stand. Joining me now for that panel is Washington Stand Editor-in-Chief Jared Bridges and Managing Editor for Broadcast Casey Harper. Guys, welcome to Washington Watch.
Thanks, Tony.
I should say welcome back. You were here earlier. All right, let's start where I just left off in the last segment, Dr. Boston, talking about this news coming out of Dearborn, Michigan, where a Muslim mayor telling a Christian resident, happens to be a pastor, who objected to the renaming of a street in the name of a local newspaper publisher who had been pro-Hamas, pro-Hezbollah, and he told him, "You're not welcome here. Get out of the city." Jared.
Yeah, I don't think our founders, when they were writing freedom into our Constitution, meant that freedom meant you could take freedom out, away from people. And I think this is kind of what we're seeing here. Well,
you know, there's a term in the Constitution and our founding documents, ordered liberty.
Yeah.
And the mindset was that under Scripture, and I know people are going to push back on this, but John Adams, second President of the United States, says, our law is made for a moral and religious people, is wholly inadequate for the government of any other. And I would bet my life on this, Casey, that he was not referring to the Quran.
No.
He was referring to the Bible.
Yeah, the idea of mass Islamic immigration would have been unthinkable to the founders. I think it almost goes without saying. But I think that we've seen a lot of things, a lot of pushback on free speech lately, and this is part of it. You know, he can't even speak up at his own city council hearing without a government official who has a lot of power over him telling him he can't be there and he should be quiet. I think Islamization of a Christian society ultimately leads to free speech crackdowns because they just have a different set of values and what's offensive than the indwelling population. And when you don't have any unity over a common faith, it's inevitable that people are always going to be offended. There's going to have to be the law's going to have to come in, but it's never going to. The laws can't regulate it.
But see, that's also a part of the problem we have as a broader culture today, finding that unity when we've lost that common religious ethic. I mean, going back to the turbulent times of the 60s, which I've made some references to over the last week because of the parallels of the assassinations and the upheaval. But there was, at the end of the day, there was still a common thread of faith, Christian faith, that we saw draw the nation back together with the Jesus movement in the 70s and into the 80s. That's what gives me the greatest concern right now, Jared. But there's also in this administration not a hope of solution, but opening the door to the solution if Christians in the church will be aggressive in sharing their faith.
Right, and that's what Christians are called to do. If they love their neighbor, they're to share their faith with their neighbor. They're not to show their neighbor the door if their neighbor's legally allowed to be there.
Right.
I mean, we're to. It's diametrically different than what this Islamic approach in Dearborn is to, you know, submit or leave, or right now it's leave. But for Christians, we see our neighbor doesn't agree with us. The Bible has a lot to say about how to live with your neighbor.
Right. Well, that's why I made that point with Dr. Boston. That's why in America you have a Muslim mayor and a Muslim community. Not that I endorse it, but because of the freedom that's allowed under the Christian ethic, you don't see that in a Muslim majority country. It doesn't happen. But I want to move on to the next topic, unless you had something, Casey.
No, I was just going to say that they have not just different theology than Christians, they have different values. And that's what Christians get wrong. They think, well, they just are like a different kind of faith with different names. This totally different value, different culture, different tradition.
And again,
it's all different.
I know that this gets pushback from people, but you look at the record, and we're going into the 250th anniversary of the United States. This nation was founded upon biblical principles. Biblical principles. Judeo-Christian, as they're often described. So this is an example of how ingrained free speech is in this country. Attorney General Pam Bondi has gotten some real pushback this week from conservatives, from those on the right, for her comments about cracking down on hate speech. I think we have a clip. Let's play that clip. Pam Bondi on that podcast.
We will absolutely target you, go after you if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, anything, and that's across the aisle. We're seeing people online who are posting hate speech. They should be shut down. They should be stopped from doing this, and they should know there are consequences for your actions.
All right, this has been walked back to some degree, Casey, but this is a little concerning.
This is very concerning to me. I mean, the Wall Street Journal, you spoke of the pushback. It ranges from Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Matt Walsh, all the way to the Wall Street Journal, across the right, the spectrum on the right, condemned her comments, and actually the Wall Street Journal editorial board said that before she goes on more podcasts to talk about Charlie Kirk, she should watch some podcasts of what Charlie Kirk actually said, because he would have condemned this very thing. Charlie was on the record saying that hate speech does not exist. It's not a legal category. It should never be prosecuted. And this is the resurrection of a corpse of something the right thought they killed when they defeated a lot of the last administration.
Look, I am not at all afraid of what other people have to say. No. And in fact, I think what gives rise to this quote-unquote hate speech, which is a nebulous term that's undefined, but what foments the violence, I think, and the hatred that is behind the speech, which, by the way, is in the heart. Yep. Jesus said it's out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks. Right. But I think what gives rise to that is a lack of debate and conversation. We're not discussing with even our differences as a nation. We're not discussing them. What we're doing is we're going together in our different groups and railing against the other group. There's no interaction.
Well, part of it goes back to our previous point, though. We're not on common footing from which to have a conversation. I mean, you have the secular liberals who believe that you can be whatever gender you want, that they used to,
Those are not secular, those are not liberals. They're not,
not even liberals anymore.
Yeah, they're not liberals anymore. We could debate with the liberals.
Right.
Because the liberals had a different viewpoint, but they still agreed that there was a common, there was transcendent truth to a degree. There was there were certain things that were real and true. The left does not believe that. The left wants to silence anyone who opposes him, and they can't debate because...
Not unlike what's happening in Dearborn.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
And they cannot defend their positions because, as you said, there's no common ground to be found.
Right. Yeah, I think the theme that we're pulling out of this is that free speech actually working is an outgrowth of a society that's unified around a common faith and ideals. So we can have these guardrails and within which to debate.
So how do we get that back?
Revival.
I mean, it really is. This is the moment for the church. I believe that our nation stands at a place of decision because we cannot sustain this path that we're on of not even being able to have a conversation. I mean, when you cannot agree that a boy is a boy and a girl is a girl, there's probably very little you can agree with.
You're speaking from two different playbooks.
Right.
It's different worldviews.
And the only way to bring that back together is to, again, not everybody thinking the same, not everybody going to the same church. We're not even talking about that. What we're talking about is a recognition that, in fact, there is truth. There is truth. I mean, I know that we live in, postmodern America, some describe it, and truth has been determined by, relative morality for some time. But this is a logical course that it takes where you can't even science becomes redefinable.
Right, and that's where we have to look back to the things that's not redefinable in Scripture.
So how do we, I want to bring up one more topic before we kind of land this plane, and that is ABC's late night host Jimmy Kimmel was booted off the air. I never watched him, I'll have to say, so I'm not... Late night for me is 9 o'clock. Yeah, so I haven't watched late night since Johnny Carson. So I don't know if you know who that was.
I did. Yeah, he's in my history book.
Okay, yeah. So I don't partake of it, but I mean, unless they're advocating for violence, they have a right to be stupid. And I understand what he said. It was insensitive. It was not funny. It was stupid. But should we be, now I think the ABC has a right to do whatever they want to do, but I understand that it's possible that the FCC had their hand in this.
Yeah, you had FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr, he said on a podcast, this is a very, very serious issue right now for Disney. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. And that's not quite you've got a nice network there. It'd be a shame if something happened to it, but it was certainly a threat, and you had.
Should the government be doing that?
Well, I mean, these are public airwaves for one, so the FCC does have an interest in it because it's airways paid for by or regulated by the FCC.
But do we have to agree with everything that's said?
And no, we don't. And there may be a few things at play here. Kimmel's show didn't even get as much viewership as Colbert's show. CBS canceled Colbert's show because it was losing money. So it might have been convenient for them to do that. But they are threatening them to. I mean, it was.
So what exactly did Kimmel say?
Kimmel said, the MAGA gang is desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
Well, so he lied.
Yeah.
So either he has no idea what's going on, or he just flat out lied, because we know that's not the case.
Right. And he's said egregious things before. It's not.
When I was first a reporter, it was a very similar format as what we have here, and I would interview the left, and I would just let them talk. I didn't want to silence them. I wanted them to talk, because the more I let them talk, the more I exposed how unhinged they were. And I think you see this. I know they do it under the guise of humor. Right. They're not even funny. But it just shows how unhinged they are and how disconnected they are to the truth.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything that's said is true, and it's probably a little worrisome that the FCC is publicly maybe intimidating companies to do this. But if you've had the misfortune to regularly watch Kimmel's show, it is pretty much the anti-Trump show every day. It's not a wide-ranging show that goes on all kinds of diverse political topics. It is, every monologue is just making fun of Trump. And I think there is a question, without even agreeing with what was done here, of what obligation do public airwaves have to be even some semblance of just serving the public versus serving one side?
I mean, a valid question. I mean, I think there's a sense of decorum that we should have, especially when it comes to our leaders. But do we have that same for Joe Biden?
I think
we do as Christians. We have to.
Yes.
We need to respect our leaders.
Yeah, and the thing we need to watch out for, and the right needs to watch out for, the administration needs to watch out for, is setting precedent to where the next in another administration, future down the road, is a show like this going to be censored.
That is always my consideration in this is looking downrange.
Yeah.
How is this going to be? What precedent will this set? Rules, procedures, policies need to be universal in terms of how we treat everyone. Do we want to be treated that way? Now, I'm not going to be criticizing, people who were assassinated or presidents. I'm going to talk about their policies. But could that be interpreted as criticism?
Yeah. Or even Antifa being labeled a terrorist group. I mean, they have, there's some evidence for that. A lot of the BLM riots seem to have Antifa people there stoking violence. But when it turns out you can just bomb terrorist ships that are called Venezuela in the ocean, and then you're labeling people terrorist groups, it raises that same question about precedent for the future.
I mean, a lot to pray about. Jared, Casey, thanks so much for joining us.